Hi everybody, and welcome to your Venus in Leo horoscopes for this extended stay of Venus in Leo between the months of June and October of 2023. Venus entered Leo on June the 5th and will be staying in Leo until October 7th. No, October the 9th. And so we've got this extended stay of Venus in the sign of the Sun. And so we're thinking about, what does Venus mean for us and what does Leo mean for us, and how is this cycle, this repeating cycle that we see every 8 years when Venus takes a great big retrograde in the middle of this transit. How is this showing up for us? What do we recognize about the previous time or times, and what might we expect in following times, in 8 years time, in 16 years time, and so on and so forth. And so when we think about the archetypes of Venus, we think of finances, we think of our relationship to sensuality, to worldly pleasures, to our senses of touch and smell and sound and taste, and the things that we view with our eyes. So aesthetics, the kind of art that we like, the kind of music that we like to listen to, the kind of food that we like to feed ourselves. And then we marry this with the archetypes of Leo, and Leo is thinking about things from the perspective of the sun. So the greatest amount of light in the whole of the solar system, this is Leo. Leo shines a light out from itself. So Leo is bright and shiny and creative and charismatic and exuberant. Leo can tend to get a bit of a bad rap for being a bit all about me and not about we, which is much more a kind of Aquarius thing. But Leo is the individual, and all about me is a kind of shadow side of Leo, whereas the light side of Leo is all about shining a light to allow others to remember, in a sense, what it is to be alive, to have fun, to be a child, to be creative, and to be excited about this experience that we are having down here on Earth. The greatest expression of Leo is when we are able to shine a light for other people, and allowing our light to illuminate somebody else, which is where that kind of Leo Aquarius axis comes into play a little bit more, and we get a bit more of the we as well as the me. And so each zodiac sign has the light and the shadow sides, and so we're just going to look at some of these various archetypes related to Venus and Leo in this current transit. I need to breathe. I've set up my recording system slightly different today, and so it's making me panic a bit, because I'm like, where am I? Because I haven't got the front facing camera on, because when I did that, my eyes were not looking at you, they were kind of like looking off over there, and it was just really strange. So I'm just trying this in a different way. I hope it pays off, but it may not. So let's talk quickly through the key dates of this transit. So Venus went into Leo on the 5th of June. It will retrograde on the 24th of July in the UK. So this could be the 23rd or the 25th, depending on where you are in the rest of the world. Venus will station direct in the sign of Leo on the 4th of September. Again, that's PM, it's about 10 o'clock in the evening in UK time, so adjust for your place on the planet. And it will leave its shadow, so leave the degrees at which it has gone retrograde at and recovered during the retrograde, so moving into new territory on the 7th of October. And then finally, Venus will ingress into Virgo on the 9th of October. So I've got various laptops buzzing in the background. So those are the key dates. The degrees at which things will be taking place vary slightly. So Venus will go retrograde at 28 degrees of Leo. And this is the first time for quite a few decades where this Venus cycle is beginning the retrograde in the sign of Leo, because the previous one to 2023 that we're having now was in 2015 when Venus retrograded in the sign of Virgo at 0 degrees of Virgo. And so some of the Venus retrogrades that we're going to look at that happened in the past initially retrograded in the sign of Virgo, but they moved back into the sign of Leo. So there's this kind of back and forth between Virgo and Leo. And from this point in July, these Venus retrogrades will be retrograding beginning at the sign of Leo and retrograding back through the sign of Leo, through Leo degrees or Leo degrees, for the next few cycles at least, as the Venus cycle, that the way that Venus interacts with the sun, basically the synodic cycle, only changes by 2 degrees each year. And so we've got quite a lot of time for this reoccurring theme with Venus in the sign of Leo, taking us through these repeating cycles and repeating themes in our lives and repeating houses within the birth chart that we are getting a feel for and that are becoming more emphasized during this transit. So we're retrograding at 28 degrees of Leo. We're retrograding all the way back down to 12 degrees of Leo, which is where we reach the direct station point. Another bleep on the laptop in the background. Let me turn that off. There we go. Yeah, so that direct station taking place on the 4th of September, and Venus will be stationing for a few days either side of that. And then finally leaving shadow on the 7th of October. And so we've got this big period of time now where we are looking at our relationship to Leo. It is really hot in the UK today. Oh dear, just move my hair out of the way. Yeah, looking at our relationship with Leo and Venus, and how has our relationship with these two planets and this specific cycle of retrograde, where we find all of the re-words like re-evaluating, revisiting, rescheduling, reassessing, all of those retrograde words that we find ourselves looking at whenever we're in a Mercury retrograde or any other kind of retrograde. You know, all of the planets go retrograde at various points. And the Venus retrograde is just particularly significant because it doesn't go retrograde as often, and it's a very neat pattern in which it does it. A really cool thing to do is to look up quickly on YouTube the Venus synodic cycle or the Venus star cycle, and you just see the kind of spirograph image that it makes when it goes through these 8-year cycles, and it makes this really beautiful flower shape that is very, very symmetrical. So it's absolutely fascinating. And in terms of life experience, it can be a real kind of turning point, a real linchpin in our years. If you are a fixed sign, sun, moon or rising, so that's Leo, Scorpio, Aquarius or Taurus, that really stumped me earlier as well, then you might find that this Venus retrograde is more significant for you. Also, if you have planets in fire signs, so Aries, Leo or Sagittarius, again, this is a powerful transit for you. But for all of us, we all have Leo somewhere in our birth chart. And even if, like me, for example, Leo, covers an empty house in the birth chart, there is still a ruler of that house somewhere in your birth chart. So the sun is the ruler of Leo, and then you would look to see where the sun is in the birth chart, which house is that in. So for example, I'm a Cancer rising, Leo rules my second house, and I have no planets in there, but the sun ruling my second house lives in my 8th house in the sign of Aquarius, which is opposite. And so this can be felt through an opposition experience. Yeah, so hopefully that makes some sense. So there are no empty houses, there are no empty areas of life. It's just that some houses or areas of life are more emphasized in this lifetime, and we always have to think of the ruler of that house and where is that in the birth chart, which is just something I get really excited about, and I find it really profound in terms of its symbolism. And that's the thing that kind of finally switched me from this thing of, oh, you know, I've got an empty third house, or I've got an empty 10th house, to suddenly feeling like the whole of the birth chart is abundant with information and symbolism once you get into the rulership schemes. Yeah, so that is just something extra there. So we are going to dive into horoscopes. Let me just pull these up. Okay, there are so many of them. Let's see if we can crack on with this. Okay, so for Aries rising, Venus in Leo will be, it has ingressed into your 5th house, will be having its retrograde in your 5th house and moving direct again in your 5th house, before finally moving into Virgo in October and moving into your 6th house. So your 5th house is emphasized during these summer months in the Northern Hemisphere, winter months in the Southern Hemisphere. And the 5th house is all about fun, creativity, children, the inner child, romance. This is kind of like going on dates with people. This is how you enjoy anything to do with relationships. So having Venus in this sign, which is also connected to relationships, this feels like quite a significant one for you. There's a nice trine aspect coming from the ascendant in Aries to Leo in the 5th house. So that 5th house is kind of connecting to the rising sign, to the life force, to the being, to the psychology, and it's importing its information of anything to do with finances, any Venus topics. So those Venus topics we were talking about, the finances, the connection to sensuality, the connection to love and romance. And at the same time, we've got transiting Saturn in Pisces in your 12th house, which is bringing up structures and redefining and putting the hard work and putting the time into that quieter area of the birth chart, which is sometimes a place of rest and recuperation. It can bring about spiritual experiences, especially with the sign of Pisces here being that mutable water sign and allowing psychic information to kind of ebb and flow in and out of the 12th house. The 12th house can be a bit of a blind spot, so just be aware of your energy levels at this time. And this is a transit that we've got going on for the next 2.5 years with Saturn in Pisces, and it's one that you will have already started when Saturn moved into Pisces back in March. And I feel like this Venus retrograde in Leo it may bring, definitely so, more so probably for Aries rising, possibly bring old love interest back into your life, passionate, heated love affairs. We've got Venus with Mars at the beginning of this transit. So that's bringing the masculine and the feminine together and creates, you know, passion, drive, enthusiasm, warrior energy with the sensual. So this is a very kind of sexy, tasty transit for Aries risings. Taurus risings, Venus in Leo is going to be in your 4th house of home and family and your roots. Can be slightly more connected to the father, but can be parents in general, grandparents, family lineage, can be to do with the home. The living environment is more of the 3rd house, but the 4th house is definitely still connected to the kind of structure in which you are living, so the physical house that you're living in. So this Venus retrograde in Leo may see you looking back on the way that, you know, the family dynamics of relationships and inherited themes that may, the 4th house is a very kind of subterranean house. It's kind of under the horizon. It's fairly hidden and it kind of bubbles away. It's quite esoteric in a sense. And so with this kind of transit of love and passion and desire, kind of doing this backwards and forwards wave over the summer months. I'm going to keep referring to it as the summer months because I am in the Northern Hemisphere, but I honour the fact that if you're in the Southern Hemisphere, you will be in the winter months. So yeah, this passionate love affair that has roots deeply connected with the family and things that are potentially brought over from themes imported from the family. So perhaps you're getting married and you are wearing your mum's wedding dress and you're, you know, upcycling it or doing something like that. That would be a very kind of Venus in Leo in the 4th house. But you're having to take it to the dressmaker to have some alterations done to make it fit you, but it still has the essence of your mum within it. And then you've got Saturn in Pisces in your 11th, right, in your 11th house right now, which is bringing about lessons and honouring the processes of time when it comes to groups and the way that you interact with groups. This is, you know, because with Taurus risings, Venus is your ruling planet, so this will be quite an emphasised transit for you because this is transiting Leo, and this is, you know, passionate love affairs and potentially importing themes of groups as well into those love affairs, because we've got Saturn as well. So if you're at a stage in your life where marriage is on the cards, then perhaps, you know, if you're engaged and you're planning a wedding, perhaps all of your friends are helping you like set up the playlists and create all of the beautiful decorations that you want to bring in to your wedding, with Saturn in Pisces in the 11th house. And you're not getting married yet, but you're getting married in a couple of years' time, and you're just kind of doing all of the creative stuff now. You know, maybe you're hiring an astrologer or a tarot reader or a crystal ball reader to be at your wedding as part of the entertainment. I really like that for Saturn in Pisces in the 11th house, adding that physical structure of a person actually being there in the room, but sharing their esoteric knowledge. That's where I live. Knowledge. Second video of the day. I'm getting a bit hoarse and a bit whoop, and it's really hot. Yes, sharing that knowledge with the group, the friendship group that lives so well in the 11th house. And the 11th house is the joy of Jupiter as well. So this is a really fun house where opportunities and expansive, like, what's the word? I'm suddenly thinking of the word of teachers, because you know, Jupiter rules teachers. Saturn is quite a teacherly thing. So perhaps chance meetings, expansive opportunities to expand your mind and expand your relationship with the esoteric and the more kind of hidden side of life, and connected with dreams and ethereal knowledge as well. Gemini risings, Venus in Leo will be taking place in your 3rd house. This is your living environment, this is your local environment, this is your neighbourhood, neighbours, siblings, aunties, uncles, cousins, friends to some extent, you know, close friends perhaps you grew up with. And so this Venus retrograde is incorporating all of those themes. Could be involved in a learning environment as well. So perhaps if you're single, you meet somebody on a course that you're taking, and you have these summer months where you're kind of flirting, like back and forth. Gemini risings, very flirtatious nature generally, and you are spending the summer months, you know, enjoying this kind of new romantic love affair, and kind of discovering each other. And then as the retrograde kicks in July, you're actually really getting to know each other and kind of going back over, oh, okay, so when we first met, this was happening. I want to know more about that, and what is this part of you, and I want to discover more. It could also involve taking on a course, and getting the finances in place for taking on that course. And you know, perhaps once the Venus retrograde kicks in, it, you know, if you don't have the finances in place currently, the Venus retrograde can kind of allow the new information to come in about where you might be able to seek out the finances to invest into this course and invest into this new information and new way of learning. And then you've got Saturn in Pisces in your 10th house, which is really highlighting that career house at the moment, and highlighting the way that you show up in the world and kind of putting down solid, firm boundaries, which is not words we would usually associate with the sign of Pisces, but solid, firm boundaries in the way that you are acknowledged in the public sphere, for being empathetic, for being intuitive, for being creative, for being musical, for being dreamy even. And that's a process that's going on for the next 2.5 years while Saturn is still in Pisces. Cancer risings. Venus in Leo is going to be taking place in your 2nd house of finances, self-worth. Oh, I've stopped breathing again. Must remember to breathe. Yeah, finances, self-worth. The 2nd house can be connected to the foods that we eat, because it's the kind of things that we value, that we want to put into our bodies. And so with Leo covering the 2nd house, this can be kind of like, oh, I feel like I only want to shop from a certain place, or have, you know, have somebody else make my food and treat me like a king or a queen, for example, because kings and queens are a very Leo subject because of the sun being the brightest body in the sky, and therefore having this royal kind of like illuminating quality, and wanting to allow us to shine with Leo in the 2nd house, and that sense of self-worth and finances. So this could be an interesting summer for ideas of your finances and work life, to just be undergoing this kind of reevaluation process. And your sense of self-worth as well. And, you know, is that based, have you got any planets in the 2nd house in the sign of Leo that are affecting this sense of self-worth? Have you got any planets in the 8th house, in the opposite house to the 2nd house, which are having an impact, or in square, so in the other fixed signs which are affecting your sense of self-worth? Take a look at that. And then Saturn in Pisces is moving through your 9th house of spirituality, religion, higher learning, teachers, dreams, and this is really solidifying that area of life over the next 3 years. Not forgetting that we'll be going through a Saturn retrograde soon, so we're going to be, Saturn has only reached around about 7 or 8 degrees of Pisces so far during this current transit, this current phase of Saturn in Pisces, and soon we'll be going retrograde back down to 0 degrees of Pisces. So we'll be revisiting a lot in the 9th house area of life as well as the 2nd house area of life. So that kind of interplay between how I earn my money, who I am as a person, my sense of inner strength and power, self-worth, connected to what am I learning from this, what is the higher meaning of it all, what is the meaning of life, that kind of thing. Leo risings, Venus will be in Leo in your 1st house, so this is super exciting. Renovation of the self, your psychology, how are you showing up in the world. Maybe don't go for a fully committed restyle, because during the retrograde this might you might find that you're reassessing and thinking, actually no, I didn't really want to go that short with the hair, or I didn't want to get those shoes because now I've got blisters and they're killing my feet, that kind of thing. But I like this one in terms of just feeling really creative. A check-in with your own psychology, you know, is it the same as it was 8 years ago, 16 years ago when we had the previous Venus retrograde cycles, or have I changed as a person? And you know, do I sometimes find myself slipping into that I must be in the limelight all the time, that kind of shadow side of Leo, or do I now want to be shining light for other people to be able to shine theirs? Do I want to inspire other people and utilize this sun-filled first house with Venus here as well to really kind of benefit the world at large as well as the self? And this is really, for Leo risings, this is really about kind of falling back in love with yourself. I love this for Leo risings, in terms of just really spending time getting to know yourself again, checking in with yourself, thinking about your psychology and your attitude to finances as well, and your own relationship with sensuality and pleasure. Sorry, the light is shining on my phone face. Saturn in Pisces will be transiting your 8th house and has been there for a few months now, and will be there for the next 2.5 years. And so this is really taking a look at the way that you interact with other people's finances, anything to do with inheritance, particularly emotional inheritance, spiritual inheritance, musical inheritance perhaps, and the way that you are putting solid structures around those things to really be able to make your intuition tangible in some way. That's very kind of adding that very Saturn, very earth-based physical reality structure to something spiritual. Perhaps it's, you know, you've inherited the ability to make music, to play guitar, to play the piano, to sing, and to write poetry even, for example. And now you are spending some time you know, formulating that poetry or that music into an album or into a book, or into something that can be passed down to future generations. Paying attention to finances as well, any kind of loans, or any finances that are borrowed from other places, just getting to grips with how those things work in your life, and allowing for the kind of having the faith that things will be okay, but in terms of like paying things back, but also putting the structures around, you know, any systems that you're putting in place to kind of be making sure that you are paying your repayments on time, those kinds of things, getting to grips with those kinds of things. Virgo risings, Venus and Leo will be taking place in your 12th house, with Saturn in Pisces in your 7th. So Leo in the 12th house is this beautiful, bright, shiny, sparkly light that perhaps you find it difficult to see yourself, but other people might be able to see it, because the 12th house is typically known as the blind spot. So somewhere that we find it difficult to access ourselves, but other people might be able to see it a bit more clearly. The 12th house also calls to us for deep rest and downtime, and to have faith that the sun will rise again each morning, and to have faith in these brightest months of the year, that we are supported in this venture in our lifetime. This is also getting in touch with our spiritual side of creativity. So if you are spiritual and creative, putting this into you know, enjoying the way that this is feeding into our daily lives over the summer months. Perhaps you do you know, aura paintings or something like that, and it's like putting the spiritual into the creative world. This also connects to children, because Leo is a sign very connected to children and having fun and romance. And perhaps you've been neglecting having fun, or, you know, neglecting going on dates, or kind of just really allowing yourself to just enjoy some romantic, flirtatious fun. And perhaps this transit over the summer months is just kind of nudging you a little bit to say, like, it's okay to kind of, you know, go on a date, and it's okay to flirt again, even if you've been in a relationship for years. It's okay to find that spark again and to have fun. Where are we here? And then Saturn in Pisces in the 7th house, you know, this is putting the structures around your relationship house. So this is one-to-one relationships, this can be marriage, this can be close friendships, business partners as well. So this does feel, for Virgo risings, quite connected to the romantic element of the Venus retrograde in Leo, because it is, you know, activating that sort of area of life. It's asking you to work quite hard at how you're approaching those one-to-one relationships in your life, and how you probably empathically or intuitively, can't think of the right word there, know how your partner is feeling, because Pisces in the 7th house is very intuitive and can pick up on emotions and feelings. Checking in with yourself, you know, is what I'm feeling, is that my stuff or is that my partner's stuff? And working, you know, Pisces in the 7th house, probably, you know, you have to work through this probably quite regularly, you know, having some downtime, having some space, connecting with your dreams and any messages that might be coming through from those, because it's hard to kind of, it's hard to contain Pisces. So Saturn in Pisces, you know, it's quite a struggle to put a physical structure around it, but this transit is asking us to try and find something in the material world that is reminding us to take time out for ourselves to recharge, as well as giving back to others, which is something that Pisces in the 7th house probably overdoes. So just remembering where you end and somebody else begins is a really important one for Virgo risings. Libra rising, Venus in Leo is taking place in your 11th house of friends, groups, support networks. This is a fun house to be illuminated by a transit, and checking in with friendships. You know, how are they going? Do they still feel good, or do they need some work? This can bring about any issues to do with finances and friends, any reassessing that needs to go on there. You know, like, don't mix business and pleasure. That phrase just comes to mind. This idea of keeping finances and friendships maybe separate can be coming about during the Venus retrograde in the 11th house. This is also a really good time to just be like having fun with friends and enjoying the arts with friends, going out to art galleries, going out to gigs, going out and enjoying your favourite food, going to a show, you know, going to the West End and we're going to watch a musical or something like that. Feed that inner child, because Leo in the 11th house, that's super fun, and that's kind of like being the star of the show within your friendship group, you know, being the entertainer, and shining your light as well as shining light for other people. And Saturn in Pisces is in your 6th house for the next 2.5 years. So this is working on adding structures to your daily routines, the way that you look after your body and your health, and listening to your intuition when it comes to your health. That's a really important thing with Pisces in the 6th house. What is your intuition telling you about the foods that you're eating, about the people that you're spending time with, about the actions that you take each day, you know, the physical actions you take each day? Do you do a physical job, or do you do yoga every day, or do you go swimming every day? And how does that feel for you? Do you know intuitively, you know, how that's affecting you? Do you need to listen to music on a daily basis, or watch films on a daily basis? Or this is a bit like having the moon in Pisces when you've got Pisces in the 6th house, because it's just that, the Piscean needs on a daily basis, which is why I mentioned the films, the dreams, the writing the poetry, listening to the music, and remembering to come back to the self, because Pisces is all about giving out to, not necessarily giving out to the other, but just feeling the whole of the world's emotions as your own, and finding it difficult to kind of know where to cut off. So just remembering to come back to the self in a very physical, grounded way, to, you know, be present with your own body. Scorpio risings, Venus in Leo is taking place in your 10th house of career, of public success, notoriety. This could be a pay rise at work, and during the retrograde you are kind of finalising the amounts that the pay rise will relate to. This is really celebrating, you know, your creative prowess in the world, and how you are acknowledged as being this powerful creative person. Or this can be very linked to teachers in the world as well, because it is connected to children. And you know, so perhaps you're becoming a head teacher and you're being acknowledged finally for all the years of hard work that you've been putting in. But that Saturn in Pisces in the 5th house as well, this definitely connects the idea of children and putting the hard work in, because Saturn is all about dedication and time, and the 5th house is about children, creativity, fun, romance. And in the sign of Pisces, having a real deep sense of empathy with how children are feeling, and how romantic partners are feeling potentially, because that they can live in the 5th house as well. This makes me think of, is it I don't think it used to be called Senko, and now it's called SEN, the role within schools where children that need extra support are supported by a specific member of staff for extra things. And for Scorpio risings, I really feel like this is a, you know, a powerful, this would be a powerful celebration of that Venus retrograde transit. And also just enjoying your successes, you know, Venus being a benefic, enjoying your successes in relation to work, and allowing you to be creative in the 5th house with Saturn in Pisces. Sagittarius rising, Venus is in Leo, is taking place in your 9th house of, I mean, this is a great one for Sagittarius, because the 9th house is spirituality, wisdom, higher learning, all those things that Sagittarians like. It's the quest for truth and knowledge, and it's seeking out the next adventure. Spontaneous trips abroad could definitely come up here. You know, just finding that you've got the money to, because it's Venus, got the money to just book that spontaneous trip to the Peruvian Andes. Is that even a thing? Are the Andes in Peru? I don't know if that's true. But anyway. But yeah, booking a trip to somewhere. And then enjoying the journey as much as the actual destination. Very important for Sagittarius energy, and very important for the 9th house. Paying attention to your dreams and any blessings that are coming through your dreams, dream symbolism, creative dreams as well. What am I thinking? Being, you know, keeping a dream journal, but being really kind of artistic about it, and not just keeping it to this, like the confines of a book, but actually, you know, spreading your creations all over the house, and just really celebrating dreams as a creative release and expression. This can also be meeting and falling in love with people from abroad, and or old lovers from abroad coming back into your life. And then working through Saturn in Pisces in the 4th house, which is about the physical structures of the home, as well as ancestors, and any intuitive, you know, escapist tendencies that might have been imported into your own psychology, or inherited into your own psychology from other family members. So on the shadow side, this could be potentially drinking too much, or, you know, gambling or eating disorders, something where you do something to escape the daily grind of the world, and the 4th house being connected to family members. But this is also, you know, getting really creative about doing your family tree, having a really intuitive connection with family members, redecorating your home just intuitively. I'm seeing like rainbow paint everywhere with Saturn in Pisces in the 4th house. Really creative energy within the home, and connected to poetry and music as well. So make sure you are playing music throughout the summer months for Sagittarius rising. Capricorn rising, Venus in Leo is in your 8th house, and Saturn in Pisces is in your 3rd. So Venus in Leo in the 8th house, this is the 8th house is so tricky to talk about because it doesn't like to be talked about, because it is that kind of underground house, and it is hiding away those hidden things like guilt, fear, shame, sexuality, and taboo things that we don't like to talk about outside in the open. I probably should have brought a drink up as well. That's another thing that I'm flagging. And Venus retrograde in Leo in the 8th house is thinking about your relationship to finances and to money that you've borrowed from other people, or perhaps inheritances, anything connected to women or the father, with the sun being the father traditionally, and Venus being females. Anything there connected with finances in women or father figures. There could be a reevaluation of those things going on over the summer. So perhaps if you are waiting for some inheritance to come through, perhaps the Venus retrograde takes you through that process where you have to be the executor of the will, and you have to work through that process before you can release the funds at the end. I know people work through some of these things sometimes for like months or years, just trying to get everything into place, which is such a challenging thing to do when you've just lost somebody that's close to you as well. This can also be relationships to love that you've inherited from other people. This is other people's esteem as well. So Venus retrograde in Leo in the 8th house could even be like joining finances, getting a joint bank account with your partner, perhaps getting married and solidifying things and signing the documents. 8th house is very much connected to signing legal documents. And then you've got Saturn in Pisces in your 3rd house, which is really putting structures around learning, information sharing, your local neighbourhood. Perhaps you're buying a house, or you're building up to converting your own home or something around property, and intuitively taking in the information about the processes that you need to go through to do that, to buy a house or to extend your home, for example. This is also strong intuition with siblings and neighbours and cousins, and just having a sense of deep empathy for those people in your life as well. Aquarius rising, Venus in Leo is taking place in your 7th house, and Saturn in Pisces is in your 2nd. So Venus in Leo in the 7th house, I mean, Aquarius risings, this is definitely, I'm feeling, a romantic one for you guys. This is happening in your house of marriage, relationships, one-to-one partnerships. This can be business partnerships as well. So I like this one as an exciting rediscovery of your love for your partner, or if you're single, perhaps meeting somebody, perhaps an old lover coming back into your life, and you starting a new relationship together. Just reigniting that spark and that passion, and enjoying the creativity together. This can also connect to shared finances as well. So thinking about those themes and your relationship to passion and love, and the more kind of sensual side of life in partnership with other people. And do you allow yourself to shine your light in your relationships, or do you kind of give your light over to other people? That's another interesting one to consider for Aquarius risings. And then you've got Saturn in Pisces in the 2nd house, which is grinding down on your finances, your work, the way that you earn your own money, which in the sign of Pisces can be quite fluid and intuitive, but it's like having a natural instinctual awareness about how to raise money, because Pisces is just all about that intuition, and kind of importing potentially other people's money into our own money, and it just naturally being a supportive factor for our financial situation, our personal financial situation. Thinking about adding structures around your sense of self-worth as well. So do you need to write poetry every day to just feel like yourself? If so, then do it. You know, what's holding you back? Adding in that daily routine. Saturn wants us to kind of solidify this intuitive Piscean energy. So, you know, putting all of those poems into a solid notebook and sort of having something to show for yourself. That sounds so awful. Where did that come from? That was like a real 80s phrase. What have you got to show? What have you got to say for yourself? And, you know, using this kind of 2.5 year, well, in total 3 year transit of Saturn in Pisces, to really kind of firm up that you are, you know, loved and you are valued and you are worthy, and that your creative and intuitive skills are valued as well, because I think sometimes those sorts of things can be overlooked, because in society it's, you know, it doesn't hold as much value as being financially successful or materially successful. But Pisces in the second house is hugely successful is probably a really rubbish word, but hugely loving and sharing and empathic towards other people, and that is beautifully successful. And then finally, Pisces rising, Venus and Leo is in your 6th house of health and daily routines, and Saturn in Pisces is in your 1st house. And so this is getting to grips with your, you know, the sensuality of your daily routines. You know, do you find that you need to make love every day to feel, you know, really celebratory and, you know, in your own body and a part of life and a part of your relationship with somebody else? Do you find that you need to do something creative every day, because the 6th house is every day? This can also be a work house, so things we have to kind of tend to. And with the sign of Leo here, this is being creative every day, and this is shining your light every day and allowing other people to shine their light, to allow you to kind of shine your light and be that shiny, bright version of yourself. Thinking about your finances and just having to maybe grind down at work a little bit, and put the time and the effort in to kind of make sure that you're maintaining finances, your financial situation, but also being able to enjoy the fruits of your labour, because Leo is all about celebrating and enjoying the best of the best. Remember what I said about kings and queens and royalty earlier on. And then Saturn in Pisces in your 1st is connecting you to your sense of psychology, your physical body, the way that you show up in the world, the way that you meet people in the world. And this is putting a structure around that. So paying attention to any niggles or aches and pains in the body to do with the structures of the body, so bones, teeth, you know, the muscles that hold everything in place. And this is, you know, for the next 2.5 years, just really listening to your body and kind of putting the hard work and effort in. If you were trying to kind of go from feeling a bit sluggish and lethargic for the last few years to, no, I want to have a bit more energy, it's like putting the time and the effort and the dedication in to being able to achieve that for yourself. So that's it. That's your horoscopes for the Venus retrograde in Leo over the summer months. Let me know what you think in the comments below. I'd love to hear from you. What have I got coming up? I don't have any live events at the moment. I am available for one-to-one readings. If you visit my website, Midheaven Moonrise, that's not right, that's the old one. FreyaAstrology.com. You can book on there for one-to-one readings. I am doing some teaching, currently teaching small groups how to track your transits over the year ahead. So I'm available to book for that. It's not available on the website yet, but you can send me a message or send me an email. And that is to midheavenmoonrise@gmail.com. I'd love to hear from you, or send me a message on Instagram at FreyaAstrology. What else have we got going on? All sorts. I'm hoping to do a bit of a mini course on this Venus retrograde in Leo, where we are tracking back the previous transits of the Venus retrograde, which takes place every 8 years, so we can start to see these repeating patterns. So in that course we will look at the exact dates that have happened since 1983. So the last 6 Venus retrogrades, and really getting to grips with where Saturn was during those, during the previous Venus retrogrades. Obviously we've got Saturn in Pisces right now, which is why I've included Saturn in these today's horoscopes. But obviously Saturn was in a different sign during those previous 6 Venus retrogrades. So that's looking at how we're, our approach to the structures in our life, as well as the finances and the sensuality and all the Venusian topics that the Venus in Leo retrograde is asking us to kind of reconnect with. So let me know if that would be of interest to you, because it's not available yet, but I would like to get that onto the website fairly soon as a self-paced course, and still working on setting a date for the astrology group, monthly astrology group, to start going live. So let me know if that is of any interest to you as well. And yeah, I think that's it for today. So I'll see you soon. Take care.